Hello, class. As we continue our education and studying on what it means to be a counselor, and for most of us, probably Christian counselors, I think it's very important for us to keep in mind our biblical worldview and be able to filter through the philosophies, the tools, and different things through the Bible. We'll find that many of them will add up and be useful. There's some that we will have to discard and maybe get rid of. And there's no difference with psychopathologies. If you look at the word itself, psycho means so, pathology means disease or sickness. And so, with that definition, that puts Christians ahead of the ball game because we believe in the soul sickness. Um, Ephesians chapter 2 talks about that we were quickened, made alive, and so actually the Bible teaches so we were born dead according to John chapter 3. But for the sake of this conversation, we'll look at soul sickness, and we see that in Genesis chapter 3. We have the fall of man, and then we also have the curse that's placed upon all people, and that's placed on the world as well. In Romans chapter 5 verse 12, it talks about how all that death passed upon all men by sin. And so when death came into the world through sin, things that brought death, such as sicknesses, natural disasters, these kinds of things, entered into the world as well. And so we see that physical sickness, physical health comes into the world, and then that just follows. Then that mental health comes into the world. And so the world itself, secular psychology, looks at things such as biology, culture, gender, these different things that make up to be considered through of social pathology, psychopathology, are important things to consider, but they're missing the root of the problem, which is the sickness of the soul and how that it has been blackened by sin. As Christians, we can do more than treat the symptoms. We can also just treat the root cause of the problem through sin. And so that puts us above. I like what Boger said in the Journal of Psychology and Christianity 2023. It's important to remember our Christian heritage and spirituality, but we should not disregard the response and the information that science brings into it. And so, just looking at those together, we can see that it's important to look at biology. It's important to figure out the causes of certain things. It's important. All these things are important. But in the end, we need to remember that soul sickness is the cause of psychopathologies. And that brings us to abnormal psychology and what the Bible says about that. We see that in Romans chapter 1, verses 24 through 32, it has a whole list of the reprobate mind and how God gave them over and all kinds of abnormal behaviors that is listed there. And we also know that it's not just lost people. We see Paul struggling with that in Romans 7:15, where he's doing things that he doesn't want to do, and the effects of sin even on a Christian, and struggling in behavior. So, in a Christian point of view, anything that goes against God in the Bible that He has presented for us to follow is abnormal behavior. In a secular point of view, is anything looks at several things: the distress, the dysfunction, the whether it's dangerous, and these kinds of things, and they look at how often that is to take place, and all these things are important, but they struggle with finding out and figuring out what normal even is to be able to determine what abnormal is. So we as Christians have the Bible and have a God that never changes, and it's easy for us to determine what God says, and we can look at those things in comparing them to who Christ is and to the Bible to know what abnormal behavior is on a biblical perspective.